Recently, this commit was made in the Plasma Login Manager project. Drop code for FreeBSD support. We rely on systemd/login-d, so FreeBSD is not supported. And this commit has created quite a bit of noise. Quite a bit of noise that is honestly very misdirected. But we'll get into that. The reason why it's making some noise is very recently, FreeBSD 15.1 aims to have KDE desktop installer option, and this is a part of Plasma that is literally dropping FreeBSD support. So some people are taking this to mean that KDE is entirely dropping FreeBSD support. All of this work is going to waste. KDE doesn't care about BSD anymore. This is the end of the world. But that's not at all what's happening. That's not even remotely what is going on here. But I do understand where the confusion comes from. So, back in June of last year, there was this post made in the Gnome space, introducing stronger dependencies on systemd. And in this post, it was said that for GDM, that being the Gnome Display Manager, the Gnome Login Manager, the login screen for Gnome, which is what the Plasma Login Manager would be for Plasma for KDE, this was gaining dependency on part of the systemd infrastructure. And that led to distros like Artix Linux entirely dropping Gnome support. Now, I did actually speak to a developer who is working on bringing Gnome support into OpenRC, bringing in these systemd style components, making sure everything is actually available there to have it run. So it's not an impossible feat, but initially, yeah, it just wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work until you did some additional work to bring things back that it was now going to rely on. It most likely wasn't going to be work upstreamed into the Gnome project itself, but for people running things like OpenRC, Gnome would still be working, but Artix didn't really care that much about Gnome anyway. Not many people were using it, so it kind of didn't really matter. It didn't really matter to the project in the first place. I guess that means all you need to do would be to write a similar kind of hook for the Plasma side, and everything's just going to work. So the reason that systemd is mandatory is to make it easier to lean more on systemd for more tasks. At the end of the day, we don't ideally want to cut support for the BSDs and other niche distros, but we also don't want to hold back on making the best experience possible for the majority user base. The compromise is going all in contained areas where alternatives exist. Earlier it was stated that distros could write hooks that replace the systemd requirements. Has this changed? If someone said that, unfortunately, they were mistaken. Obviously, you could fork the project, add in anything you want, and be about your day, but mainline project wouldn't have anything of that sort. You could probably do something on the OpenRC side, similar to with Gnome, and have the systemd-like components there, but at least in the Plasma Login Manager, that wouldn't be a thing. But here's the thing. There's actually a far simpler solution, and this is why the situation is massively overblown. Yes, this is a important change for the Plasma Login Manager, but overall to the usage of Plasma, it doesn't actually matter as a change, really. So, the change I showed you earlier is in the Plasma Login Manager project. What is the Plasma Login Manager? Because this isn't what you're actually using on Plasma, at least right now. So, the Plasma Login Manager is a new display manager, a new login manager being worked on for the KDE ecosystem for Plasma. This is being forked off of the SDDM project. SDDM is most likely the login manager, the display manager that you are currently using. This is the default that is used with Plasma. The reason why Plasma Login Manager is being worked on is to have tighter integration into Plasma itself, allowing things like keyboard layout switching, virtual keyboards, actually easily doing CJKV input, having remote desktop from startup. So right now with Plasma, if you want to do remote desktop, you have to be logged into Plasma. That's annoying. Nobody wants to do that. So this would allow it to work directly from the login screen. And there's a bunch of other changes being made that brings it more in line with GDM, because whilst I might have issues with a lot of what Gnome is doing, GDM, the reason why it is so good is because it is tightly integrated with Gnome. It's not just this external component that you can run alongside Gnome. When you install GDM, it pulls in the Gnome shell. It pulls in the Gnome shell because GDM is powered by the Gnome shell. Right now, SDDM is an additional component outside of Plasma that then opens up Plasma. That's great to allow things to easily be separated and swap new things in, but you don't get this access to really powerful, tightly integrated features. And the Plasma Login Manager is being designed to have that tight integration and being designed as a Linux-first login manager, taking advantage of all of the powers that are available in Linux to try to create the best login manager experience that you can possibly make. But here is the very important detail. Even when this is deployed, even when this is the default, you don't have to use it. This is exactly what David meant when he said the compromise is going all in contained areas where alternatives exist. If you don't run Plasma Login Manager, you don't have that systemd dependency. That dependency, right now, maybe things change in the future, is only in the login manager itself. I launch Plasma from the TTY. I'm going to keep doing that. I just do start Plasma Wayland, and everything is good to go. If you want to keep using SDDM, that's not going away. You can absolutely keep doing so. If you want to use a completely different login manager, that's also not going away. All of these are supported ways to launch Plasma. For instance, if you want to use something like LY, this is a TUI login manager. I've known about this for a long time. I don't know why I've never actually gone and played around with it, but if you want to use this, yeah, you can also do this as well. This is literally only a change that is taking place in what is going to become the new default Plasma Login Manager. So on FreeBSD, either they could fork it and remove the systemd dependencies, or just use another login manager. And a bunch of publicly facing KDE developers have really been trying to clean up this mess. So GitHub, in case you don't know, on commits actually does have a comment section. It's usually supposed to be for, commenting on different patches being done, things like that, but it also exists just generally. And whenever there's a drama, whenever there's any nonsense going on, there will be people down here. For example, we have Conan Kudo, otherwise known as Neil Gomper from the KDE project, who is one of the people who's been trying to clean things up. This project is for Linux systems using systemd. If you're using a non-systemd system, use SDDM, it's still supported by KDE. We didn't drop FreeBSD support from KDE. Plasma Login Manager isn't all of KDE. It's intended to integrate with systemd features. We still recommend SDDM for everything else. And all around him is just doom posting. And you're seeing people say things like, oh, why would you recommend SDDM? The project is dead. Do you know what the login manager is for Plasma right now? It's literally SDDM. It's what you're using. Now, what's going to happen in the future as Plasma developers move on from it? Who knows? But just use something else. Use LightDM. Install GDM if you want to. I wouldn't recommend GDM because that's going to install the entire Gnome shell. Use LY. Launch it from the terminal. There are login managers that you can install. Just install them. Here's one of the Doom posts. You exactly know that this doesn't feel as innocent as KDE paints this to be. Quietly narrowing Plasma to Linux and systemd didn't happen. An actually crucial part of the system is a disaster that will creep into other subsystems. At some point, you'll start dropping shit left and right. If that happens, we can talk about it when it happens, but let's not talk about things that are not happening because they're not happening. this is happening in the login manager and nowhere else. And this response is just insulting. Just use SDDM. That's disingenuous and dishonest at best. Do you really think we are fools? SDDM has been barely maintained for years with long-standing issues and no clear future. Pointing users to a dead project as justification for removing working support isn't a solution. Working support's not being removed. Plasma Login Manager never actually really supported not having systemd anyway. So, yeah. At the very least, be honest about this instead of shutting the door and pretending this is no biggie. SDDM is also an independent project that KDE currently actively supports. I would expect people who actively use SDDM to engage with that project and work with them to get the issues resolved, or at least make offers to help with reviews and such to take some burden off volunteer maintainers who spend his free time on it. Neil has also been commenting over on Mastodon. KDE Plasma has two login managers in dominant use, SDDM and LightDM. Plasma Login Manager was forked from SDDM to offer a more integrated option, leveraging systemd and Plasma features, but KDE as a project still supports SDDM and continues to develop its SDDM integrations for non-systemd OSs, and the LightDM KDE greeter also exists as well, though it's not commonly used. We want to continue supporting our BSD friends if they can help us in doing so. KDE loves FreeBSD. And the KDE account has also been commenting about this as well. We're not sure where you folks are getting your info, but it is dead wrong. FreeBSD users will still be able to boot into Plasma with any other login manager that works on FreeBSD, including SDDM, which is upstream from Plasma Login Manager anyway, not Plasma itself. That's a spelling mistake, obviously, or a grammar mistake. Linux users will have just one more option. Plasma has no hard systemd dependencies. We honestly don't know where this is coming from. You will always be able to boot Plasma from whichever display manager you want, as you always have been able to. Maybe don't say always. These get clipped eventually, and maybe 30 years from now, that's not going to be true. Who knows? Someone just made up KDE would somehow block other DMs based on nothing, which, by the way, sounds like more work than just leaving things as they are, and you believe them. And we've got some comments over on Reddit as well. This was on the post on FreeBSD's Reddit. Drop code for FreeBSD support, number 42, merge request, Plasma Login Manager, GitLab. What does this mean for future KDE use on FreeBSD? Someone said, at some point they'll drop support altogether. We actively patch stuff for BSDs, so no. Not really, besides if all contributors interested in BSD disappear, but that's the same way for any project. If nobody wants to work on FreeBSD support, obviously they would effectively drop it because nobody's working on FreeBSD support. I would even assume the new Plasma Login Manager would have no issues with extra code for BSDs if somebody steps up to do it and maintain it. But at the moment, that is no goal. It is not even released for Linux, and as at the moment, systemd is required, that remove code was just dead. And at the moment, systemd is required because the remove code was just dead, as it will not work anyways. And of course, Nate Graham has been commenting as well. Any non-systemd distros like the BSDs are free to use SDDM, LightDM, GDM, again, maybe don't do that because it pulls the entire Gnome shell, or any other login manager or none at all. Plasma Login Manager is just about offering a more integrated experience on the distros that do use systemd, nothing more. There's no underlying plan to worsen or terminate non-Linux support. In fact, the last two editions of This Week in Plasma have highlighted better support for FreeBSD and OpenBSD in various places. If people who use BSDs contribute to KDE code, support for BSDs will improve. Same as how support for systemd-based Linux improves when people who use that contribute to KDE code. This still raises the question, why? Why rely on systemd? What is the point? The long-term goal of PLM is to reduce the backend to nothing and outsource everything to systemd. Getting rid of code is at odds with having an abstraction layer and BSD support. But as others have said, we already have an abstraction layer in the form of other login managers. There's no point for us solving the same problem twice. Official SDDM support remains. There's a LightDM frontend hosted by KDE 2. We are giving non-systemd users a different user experience. We are not shutting the door. Much like on the GDM side with Gnome, SCDM also had to effectively implement like this miniature version of the systemd components for handling login and various other things. And that introduces new bugs, that introduces regressions that were already resolved in systemd. And rather than duplicating that code, they say, okay, we're going to build something that is more tightly integrated with systemd, relies on the functionality, so if problems get fixed with systemd, they're also fixed for us as well. This is not a bad thing to do this. This is not forcing Plasma to rely on systemd. Again, if that happens, if that changes, we are absolutely going to talk about it. But as it is right now, it's basically just building a new option that is more tightly integrated with more functionality that relies on systemd, that provides users with a better experience. But if they want to use something else, they're free to use something else. And if you want to go add in that support for non-systemd systems to effectively make use of this new system or contribute to the Plasma Login Manager and actually maintain that non-systemd support, that can be done as well, but that's not a goal of the Plasma team. That's something that somebody else outside of it would have to get involved with. TLDR, long story short, Plasma is not dropping FreeBSD support anytime soon. They are just dropping support from the new optional login manager. Others still work, opening from the TTY still works. That's the end of that. But let me know your thoughts down below. Did you think this was a lot bigger of a deal than it actually was? Are you a BSD user? Are you slightly sad that, this new login manager is not being supported on BSD, but are going to keep using Plasma with another login manager? I'd love to know. Let me know your thoughts down below. Go subscribe if you like the video. Go like the video if you like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe, Daily Bearer Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and you will use systemd.